Hey guys, what's going on? James here, and in this video today, I am going to be giving my official Tampa Bay Buccaneers initial 53-man roster predictions today. I know that this is being filmed right after the Indianapolis Colts game, and some cuts may have already happened as of the time you are watching this video. It's going up at 7 a.m. the morning after the Colts game. Some cuts, some roster moves may have already been made. I don't know, man. I feel pretty confident about this list, about some of the guys who are going to make this initial 53-man roster, so I still felt making a video like this was pretty important, and we'll have to see what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers do. Of course, any roster moves that are made, I will be covering those in separate videos. But let's go ahead and dive right in. With the quarterback room, I have nothing special here. It's Tom Brady, it's Blaine Gabbert, it is Kyle Trask, and this is in no particular order, by the way, as to who I feel is going to be the starter or the backup or anything along those lines. But yeah, the Buccaneers are going to keep three quarterbacks: Brady, Gabbert, and Trask. That was always what it was going to be, like Ryan Griffin, but he's probably going to end up on the practice squad, which I did not do in this list, by the way, because my brain would freaking hurt. But three quarterbacks there for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers makes a lot of sense for me. In the running back room, I have them keeping four: Leonard Fournette, Rachaad White, Keyshawn Vaughn, and Giovanni Bernard, which the Bernard one is interesting because a lot of people have been mentioning recently that Giovanni Bernard could be a potential roster cut for this team to make. I don't necessarily think that will be the case. I think Bernard is good depth, can also give you some interesting things as a kick and punt returner if they need him to, if Keyshawn Vaughn, or I guess I should say if Jalen Darden isn't working out as a returner for the Buccaneers, maybe they can move to Giovanni Bernard and see what he can offer them at that position, as well as just solid veteran backup depth at the running back position. Gives you a solid runner and a pass catcher when he is healthy. So 4 running backs here for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. For the wide receiver room, I have them keeping 6. I have them keeping Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Julio Jones, Russell Gage, Tyler Johnson, and Jalen Darden. I just mentioned him a moment ago. I don't have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers keeping 7 wide receivers. Reason for that is because I just feel like the guys that would be in that 7th spot wouldn't have much to offer, unfortunately. In the case of guys like Jarrett Stearns, Devin Tompkins, Kalen Geiger, they all got pretty quiet in terms of their production after the initial Miami Dolphins preseason game for the Bucs, so I don't think they've done enough in terms of offensive productivity and consistency. Similar thing for special teams play. They haven't really made much of an impact in regards to that, either as a returner or as a kickoff, kick coverage type of player. In the case of Scotty Miller, I just think it's time for the Buccaneers to move on from him. It definitely just seems like Scotty Miller isn't able to crack out a very consistent role for himself in the Buccaneers offense or as a special teams player either. And, hey, that's not a knock on Scotty Miller. I think he can produce at another team, but I just don't think there is necessarily a spot anymore for him here with the Buccaneers. And then in the case of Breshad Perriman, very solid veteran, but he hasn't been able to showcase too much. He has been hurt. They could keep him maybe as a 7th wide receiver. I feel like he would be the most likely option, but I kind of put him in the same boat as Cyril Grayson, and the Buccaneers already got rid of Cyril Grayson. So I feel like Perriman will probably get part of those roster cuts, but I could very easily see him back on the Buccaneers practice squad, a guy that you could elevate on game day if you needed him. So that is kind of where I'm coming from in terms of the wide receiver room. I have the Bucs carrying 6 rather than what some people believe they should carry 7. I have them at 6 here. In the tight end room, I have them carrying 4 tight ends. You have Cameron Brate, you have Kyle Rudolph, you have K. Dotton, and you have Ko Keith. This was always going to be the idea, right? You have Cam Brate and Kyle Rudolph as your established veteran tight ends who can block a little bit, who can be good red zone options for Tom Brady in this offense in 2 tight end sets. You have your rookie in K. Dotton, who is able to have a little bit of everything, right? A little bit of solid receiving ability, a little bit of blocking, a guy guy that you can grow and develop, and you have your nitty-gritty guy in Ko Kieft, who can get down in the dirt, be honestly a pretty effective piece for this Buccaneers offense as a blocker. Like, don't sleep on Ko Kieft and the potential impact that he can make this season. It's not always going to show up in terms of, you know, the casual viewer and whatnot, but I really do think that Ko Kieft can make an impact as a blocker. I have the Buccaneers carrying 4 tight ends. It makes the most sense to me. In terms of the offensive line, first at left tackle, I have them carrying Donovan Smith and Josh Wells. That was, you know, pretty darn easy in my opinion. I think Wells is probably the more veteran backup offensive lineman that the Buccaneers have right now, and the coaching staff absolutely loves him. In terms of left guard, I have them carrying 2, Luke Gedeke and Nick Leverett. At center, I have them carrying 2 as well, Robert Hainsey and John Molchon, with Ryan Jensen being placed on the injured reserve and potentially coming back later on in the season. We'll have to wait and see with that. For right guard, I have them carrying just Shaq Mason, and then at right tackle, I have them carrying Tristan Wirfs and Fred Johnson. So a grand total of 9 offensive linemen. I've seen some people say that they would possibly only carry 8, but I will give them 9 here. Having a backup for Robert Hainsey, I feel, is very important, and John Molchon has a lot of good versatility. He can play center, he can play guard, very similar to Nick Leverett, who the Buccaneers are very high on as well. I just feel like they like versatility with their offensive linemen. They get a couple of guys like that with not just like Nick Leverett, but also John Molchon in that mix as well. 9 total offensive linemen for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in my list predictions here. For the defensive line, at left end, you have Will Golston and Logan Hall. For right end, you have Akeem Hicks, and the first surprise here, I actually have Mike Green on this list over Pat O'Connor. I know some people might say that is crazy considering Pat O'Connor was, I believe, a special teams captain last year. If he wasn't, he definitely was one of those guys who should have been considered. I believe him and Kevin Minter were actually the 2 main guys that would have been considered for that spot. I do believe it did actually end up going to Kevin Minter, but I have Green here. Green has just shown up more consistently for me in terms of backup defensive linemen able to do things. I almost put Deidrin Senate on this list, but I think Green has been providing some decent reps, some decent play overall. May surprise some people. I could be dead wrong on this one. I probably am, but I wanted to throw at least one little surprise in there. I did with Mike Green. I've been very impressed with Green throughout training camp and preseason and whatnot. That is my little bit of a surprise there at right end. And then for nose tackle, you have Vita Vea, you have Rakeem Nunez-Roches. I have the Buccaneers carrying 6 defensive linemen, which may be a little too few of defensive linemen, but given the Buccaneers' nature of having a 3-4 defense, I feel that it is a reasonable number. You have guys with a lot of versatility there in Rakeem Nunez-Roches, Mike Green, as well as Logan Hall. All those guys can kind of move around as backup D linemen, and then, of course, your starter. That is what it is with your starting defensive lineman there. All in all, 6 defensive linemen. I feel that is a reasonable number. For the linebacking group, first at outside linebacker, I have them carrying 5. You have Shaq Barrett, you have Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, you have Anthony Nelson, Carl Nassib, and Jannard Avery, which may surprise some people. I think that, you know, Andre Anthony has had some good moments. He's had 2 sacks throughout this preseason, right? But I am really going off of that pick with Jannard Avery being placed on this list based off of what I've seen from media. In the case of Buccaneers media, they were treating the Jannard Avery signing as if he was already being considered a part of the Buccaneers 53-man roster as a special teams player and as a backup edge rushing linebacker. And then in the case of the Pittsburgh Steelers media that I saw being, you know, talked about with the Jannard Avery release from the Steelers, they were surprised that Avery was released from that team. They thought that he was having a really good training camp in preseason, and they were surprised that he got cut. So combining all of those media reactions, I decided to put Avery here. I am a fan of his. You know, I was a big fan of his coming out of college and was really interested in following his journey through the early stages of his NFL career. Happy he is on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers now. I think he can be a solid contributor on special teams and as a backup linebacker if they need him for more edge rushing depth, which is already a pretty healthy rotation. I think that that continues here with the Buccaneers carrying 5 outside linebackers. In the case of inside linebackers, I only have them carrying 4. I have Levante David, I have Devin White, I have KJ Britt, and I did go with Grant Steward over Olakunle Fatukasi, which may surprise some people. Fatukasi has been having an excellent preseason. I just think that the special teams play is going to matter here. We've seen the kickoff coverages and the punt coverages not be the best for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but one guy who has still been consistently showing up on those coverage teams has been Grant Steward, and the Bucs need as many good special teams players as they are going to get, because quite frankly, they aren't getting a lot of good special teams play from their gunners, be it cornerbacks or wide receivers or whoever they try out at those positions. Not great. So the guys who are inside on those kickoff coverage teams, I feel like have more value there, Grant Steward being one of those guys. So that is why I have him over Fatukasi. We haven't seen Fatukasi play too much in terms of, special teams play that have really popped off the page, and in terms of, making an impact and things along those lines, where we have seen that play with Grant Steward. That's why I have him over Fatukasi here. Fatukasi would still be on the practice squad, in my opinion, 100% if he wouldn't land with another team's 53-man roster or their practice squad. I would easily have him in there as one of the top guys on the Bucs practice squad, a guy that you could elevate if you needed him. But finally, moving on to the secondary, I have the Buccaneers carrying 5 cornerbacks. I have them carrying Carlton Davis, Jamel Dean, Sean Murphy-Bunting, Zion McCollum, and D. Delaney. Some guys have been doing some interesting things. Kyler McMichaels had an interesting preseason, very up and down. Similar thing with Don Gardner, but I feel like D. Delaney is going to be a hopefully valuable guy on special teams as well. We haven't had, too much great play from the cornerbacks and whatnot as punt gunners, but I feel like D. Delaney can be that guy who can hopefully provide some good special teams play moving forward. Fingers crossed. Wouldn't surprise me if the Buccaneers just said, hey, we're not going to have D. Delaney here. We're just going to bring in another guy who has had some good special teams film that may get cut from another team. I almost put Rashard Robinson in here as well. He's a guy who could also end up on the Buccaneers practice squad, but for this list, I decided to go with D. Delaney. He's got a good history with the Buccaneers already. The coaching staff does like what he's been able to offer as a cornerback in the past. I know D. Delaney and Rashard Robinson both had to play cornerback a decent amount due to all the stinking injuries last year, but I just decided to go with Delaney on this one. Could very easily be somebody else from another team. With the safeties, I have them carrying 4. You have Mike Edwards, you have Keanu Neal, you have Antoine Winfield Jr., and you have Logan Ryan. Nolan Turner's one of those guys that could stay for special teams purposes, but I have him going on the Buccaneers practice squad if he does clear waivers and everything. He has had a very up and down preseason, and he could very easily make this 53-man roster, but again, haven't seen much of an impact from him in terms of special teams play. That is where it matters for guys who are on this roster bubble, and we didn't see enough from Nolan Turner, in my opinion. A lot of people thought he was going to be the special teams ace for this team, but it did not happen, and in my opinion, I didn't see too much of an impact from Turner in terms of special team work, and that is why I kind of left him off this list. And then for the specialists, I have them carrying Ryan Suckup as the kicker. He beats out Jose Borregales. I feel like that is pretty much a set-in-stone type thing. Jake Camarda is the punter. He's the only punter on the roster, and I don't think they're going to cut him at this point. And Zach Triner as the long snapper, who does a pretty darn good job on special teams, along with guys like Grant Steward. So yeah, folks, that is my 53-man roster predictions video. This wasn't too terribly difficult of a list to make. You did have some difficult decisions. Right at the wide receiver room, it was a little bit interesting to say, hey, are they going to carry 6 wide receivers or 7 wide receivers? In terms of the offensive line, are they going to carry 8 offensive linemen or 9 offensive linemen? In the interior linebacker, getting rid of Fatukasi. In the secondary, getting rid of Nolan Turner. Getting rid of Rashard Robinson over D. Delaney. There were some interesting decisions there to be made, but all in all, I do feel very happy with this list. I think that this is probably one of the more solid lists that I've put out there. Maybe I could have put Pat O'Connor, over a guy like Mike Green, but I wanted a little bit of a spicy take in terms of the backup defensive lineman for the Bucs. We'll see if I end up being right. Who knows? But anyway, folks, what do you think about my official 53-man roster predictions video? Again, just the initial roster. I can't consider what the heck's going to happen with cuts around the league that may make the Tampa Bay Buccaneers make some other signings, because I can't predict that, man. I don't know what's going to happen with other teams. So I can only guess what's going to happen with the team I cover here. So it is what it is, man, okay? Cut me some slack. But folks, again, let me know what you think about my list down in the comment section below. I would love to hear it. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hope y'all enjoyed. And I will see you all in the next video or the next live stream. But until then, and as always, guys, goodbye for now, and go Bucs.